You know, America, Kamala Harris is spewing, burping up about the border. I had to shut it off during the break. She's going on about when she was a tough prosecutor. She was never a tough prosecutor. She's going on and on about how she would have signed the bipartisan bill, not a single Republican in the House, one Republican senator that would enshrine 95% of what's going on. It's an amnesty bill. Of course, nobody's read it but me. I'm just so sick and tired of her phony, false Potemkin campaign. But she's learned a lot at the side of Joe Biden. He's very much the same way. We have a dear friend of ours on the program here from the New York Post who's broken so many fantastic and important stories, Miranda Devine. She's got a very important new book out, The Big Guy, How a President and His Son Stole America. That's quite a title. Miranda, how are you, my friend?
I'm very well, thanks, Mark, and thank you for having me on.
My pleasure, and you can get that book on Amazon.com, and Mr. Producer, put it on all my social sites and link it to there if you don't mind. Miranda, this is like a huge area, and yet it's an area where you broke so many stories, an area of your expertise. They stole America. Tell us what you mean.
Yeah, how President and his son actually sold out America. And as we know, Hunter Biden, Joe Biden's former crackhead son, and his brother Jim Biden were going around the world when Joe Biden was vice president and selling his influence. And Joe Biden was aware of that and intimately involved. He made himself available for lunches, breakfasts, dinners, you name it. He was on the speakerphone with Hunter Biden's overseas business partners. He was very happy to be the product that they were selling, and even though he lied to the American people before the 2020 election, said he knew nothing about his son Hunter's overseas business dealings, the White House, interestingly, has more recently changed that wording to that Joe Biden was not in business with his son. So, I mean, look, Mark, that story I think we know about, but the biggest story, I think, bigger than the corruption, even bigger than a compromised president in the White House, is the cover-up by the CIA, by the FBI, the State Department, the Department of Justice, and the same people who covered up for Joe and Hunter Biden and Jim Biden, the same people are now propping up Kamala Harris, endorsing her, writing letters saying that she's a more capable and serious person to be commander-in-chief than Donald Trump. They want a puppet they can control, like they did with Joe Biden, and they are terrified of Donald Trump because he is uncontrollable.
Let me ask you this. Have you ever seen such a dishonest and diabolical campaign like this, where they hide her radicalism, they hide her true views? If they come out, she has to lie about them and change positions. Then they hide her. She's giving a speech right now where she's talking about this bipartisan bill crap, where she's going on when she was Attorney General and stopped guns and drugs and human trafficking. Almost none of that is true, yet they've raised from these Democrat Party oligarchs, kind of the people you're talking about in the ruling class Democrat Party, so much money, they have so much power, they have the media. You think this is going to work?
Well, look, it shouldn't work. She's so vacuous, and every time she opens her mouth, she just seems very unserious and certainly not someone who should be anywhere near the Oval Office. It's incredible that someone as unsuitable would manage to be one of the major party candidates for president. In this vast country with so many talented people, how did it come to this? But it has, and the polls are uncomfortably close. And I think that's partly because, I think the polls are not necessarily terribly reliable. They seem to be oversampling Democrats, but I'm not going to say that that we can't trust the polls, because that's too much of an easy out. I think it's more that Donald Trump has been demonized by this concerted propaganda effort since he first took office, and that's, again, all these deep staters that I mentioned, this cabal, the blob, and the media, who are hand in glove with them and are very good at crafting narratives. And the narrative that they've crafted is that Donald Trump is an existential threat to democracy and to America. He's not. He's an existential threat to the blob, to this unaccountable, shadowy controllers behind the scenes who have their hand has come out to protect Joe Biden and his son. Their hand is there behind Kamala Harris. And they find that Donald Trump is frightening, and that's why they will do whatever it takes to make sure he doesn't get back into the White House. And he's already suffered 2 assassination attempts. I think that he has a lot of power and arrayed against him. So I think that's why she's as close as she is in the polls, just because the narrative is rigged.
Your book is so thorough. I mean, it really is a bill of attainder, as we used to call her, bill of indictment, with all the specifics laid out, one after another after another. And as I was going through your book, I got to thinking with this mayor of New York. I'm no great fan of the mayor of New York, but I try to be as objective as I can. Yeah. And I looked at these charges against him. Now, he's got a couple there that are pretty tough, but he's got a couple there that are absolutely ridiculous. You know, upgrades on flights and so forth, bribery. I don't see any bribery. But you look at something like this, where this Department of Justice goes all the way in on something like that, or the way they treat Trump, which is so contemptible. And yet Joe Biden is a prosecutor's bonanza. His son is a prosecutor's bonanza. And Joe Biden has been able to escape prosecution because he owns the prosecutors, the DOJ, because he's president of the United States. But if there really were a justice system, Miranda Devine, and if somebody was really going to be charged, and I got to be honest, you lay out the case in your book, wouldn't Joe Biden be in serious and deep trouble?
Absolutely. And you make such a good analogy or comparison with Eric Adams. You know, I'm not at all absolving Eric Adams if it does turn out that he accepted foreign favors, as it said. But as you say, having upgrades on Turkish Airlines and sort of getting the fire department to pass a building that the Turks wanted opened up, a consulate opened up before Erdogan arrived. I'm not condoning that. I don't think that's good, but it pales into insignificance in comparison with the Biden family grift, which has been covered up by the Department of Justice. With Eric Adams, his mistake was that he went against the Democrats. He went against the Biden administrations on illegal migration.
With our friend Miranda Devine, superb columnist at the superb New York Post, has written a fantastic new book that is skyrocketing on the list. The Big Guy, How a President and His Son Sold Out America. Miranda Devine, tell everybody why it's important for them to read your book now before the election.
Well, because this is a story about how one corrupt politician in Washington sold out his office to China, Russia, Ukraine, etc. via his crackhead son. But it's also, more importantly, I think, the biggest story is about the cover-up. It is about the fact that there is this unaccountable, unelected, shadowy group of people who are in the CIA, the FBI, the DOJ, the State Department, and they want to control your president. And Joe Biden was under their control, and we can see the result. He followed their agenda, and the world is on fire. Donald Trump was uncontrollable, and that's why they hate him. And under Donald Trump, he just approached the everything from first principles, because he's a property developer from Queens. He's not a politician. He's not owned by anybody. And so under Donald Trump, he treated foreign policy just with common sense. He looked at a problem, figured out how to fix it most efficiently. Under Donald Trump, Iran was on its knees. It was broke. It didn't have the resources to pay its proxies to attack Israel as it did last October 7. Vladimir Putin was in his box. He never invaded any other country like he did under Barack Obama, like he did under Joe Biden. ISIS, if you remember when Donald Trump came to office, the Islamists were terrifying. They were beheading people. They were burning them alive. They were out of control. And somehow Donald Trump managed to vanquish ISIS, and it wasn't a problem anymore. North Korea, when Donald Trump came to office, Barack Obama said to him, the biggest problem that America faces is North Korea because Kim Jong-un is making all these nuclear tests and he's saber-rattling. And Donald Trump managed to put Kim Jong-un in his box as well. And he was mocked for his sort of little rocket man bromance, but it worked. And you know, the Abraham Accords, peace was breaking out in the Middle East. The world was at peace. It was peace through strength. Donald Trump, America was feared and respected. That's the way the American people want things to be. That's the way the world wants things to be. But this unaccountable cabal behind Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, that is not on their agenda. And that's why they're so implacably opposed to Donald Trump, because he's not their man. And Kamala Harris has shown from her speech at the DNC when she started pretending to be something she's never been before. She was all for a strong military. This is a far-left radical, but unfortunately the far-left radical progressive element of the Democratic Party is in bed with this unaccountable blob, the warmongers, the people who are incompetent and have some opaque agenda that we don't understand, that doesn't realize that China is our biggest adversary, and that, you know, provoked Russia with NATO enlargement under Joe Biden. That's what he was all about, and treats Russia as if it's an existential threat and China as if it's just some tame beast that we can make money from. It's very dangerous. These people just have an agenda that is at odds with America's best interests, and they are controlling Kamala Harris. And that's why Dick Cheney and the 751 national security leaders backed her, and 9 of those are the same people from the CIA, like Leon Panetta, who signed that dishonest letter saying the laptop was Russian disinformation. It's a thread that goes back to Obama and probably before him.
Let me ask you a question, maybe a little outside your box. What is it about this administration, Harris, Blinken, Sullivan, of course, Biden, their contempt for the state of Israel, their contempt for Netanyahu? I mean, Israel doesn't throw the first punch. They're trying to defend themselves here. Hezbollah fired 9,000 missiles into their country, unprovoked, on October 8th, after the 7th. They said, okay, after 11 months of this appeasement and diplomacy by Blinken, who's really a Soros guy, they said enough is enough and we got to win. And they keep saying ceasefire, ceasefire. Anytime Israel does anything, they're not allowed to win. Where's that coming from? I mean, there's something very strange about this.
Yeah, it's all about Netanyahu. They hate Netanyahu, and I haven't got to the bottom of it other than Netanyahu is in the same box as Donald Trump, as Viktor Orban from Hungary, populist movements in Europe. They are seen as a greater threat. They are seen as sort of the domestic terrorists. And, you know, Netanyahu, before October 7, he was being undermined, with the protests on the street over the Supreme Court by people associated with the same people who fomented the Maidan Revolution in Ukraine, the same people who are backing up Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. For some reason, Netanyahu is a threat to them, probably because he also is uncontrollable. He won't do what he's told.
You just made a great point. I hadn't thought about that. These same NGOs, these same international oligarch billionaires like Soros and others, these same front groups, these same governments that are interlinked through their foreign affairs and state departments like ours is and so forth, they hate the same people. And you're right. Netanyahu is pro-Israel. Trump is pro-America.
Yeah.
You know, Orban is pro-Hungary, and we can go right down the list. And these guys won't cave in, and they stand strong. And that is a brilliant point. Do you think that's kind of what's driving it? It
has to be, because it's Netanyahu who is the bogeyman. And Look, he gave the most brilliant speech today at the United Nations. I had the privilege of going to a very small press briefing afterwards, in which there was a lot said, which I can't go into. But he is a resolute and formidable leader of Israel, which they need at this time when they are encircled, 7 battlefronts. He's had one hand tied behind his back by the Biden administration. And, as the Israelis are telling us now, and as we were told in the press briefing, if there's any daylight between Israel and America, that emboldens Iran. Iran didn't respond last time when, I think it was in April, when Israel went and destroyed some of their missiles outside their nuclear facility, and whether or not they're going to respond to today's attack by Israel on Hezbollah leadership, we don't know. They will do it if they think that they'll get away with it. And I don't understand the Obama and the Biden administration's love affair with Iran. I mean, maybe you do, but the Iran nuclear deal that they reanimated. The fact that Antony Blinken, the Secretary of State, that his childhood friend is Robert Malley, who is the Iran envoy under Obama and then again under Biden, and now he's on suspension because the FBI is investigating alleged mishandling of classified information. And Lee Smith wrote a brilliant piece in Tablet talking about how Malley was at the center of an Iranian influence operation. A spy operation. He's brought in his own people, one of whom, Ariana Tabatini.
I've got to go. I don't mean it. I want to have you back in a couple of weeks if you don't mind. The clock is against me. Because you are so full of knowledge and you understand what's going on here, that we have an administration that's pro-Iran, and Iran's trying to assassinate Trump, for God's sakes.
Exactly.
Miranda Devine, folks, this is an unbelievable book. I want you to grab it. The Weekend's the perfect time. You can order it from Amazon now, or we link to it on all my social sites. The really one-of-a-kind Miranda Devine, the big guy, how a president and his son sold out America, and how his protege, Kamala Harris, is about to step into his place if they can put her there, if they can enshrine her there, to do exactly the same thing. Miranda Devine, God bless you, my friend.
Thank you so much, Mark. Great to talk to you.
You too. Take care of yourself.